Hi, everyone, this is the Encyclopedia Channel. The book that this program interprets for you is Nonviolent Communication. This is a very famous book, hailed by the United Nations as one of the best practices in nonviolent conflict resolution in the world, with millions of copies sold worldwide. However, many people actually have a basic misunderstanding of this book, thinking that it is a book about communication skills. However, if you read this book carefully, you will find that it is not just about communication skills. Question. It actually talks about a more profound topic, that is, how to eliminate the hostility in people's hearts and fill people with goodwill. How to master systematic nonviolent communication methods. After listening to this episode, I believe everyone will understand. In order to understand the theme of this book, we must first talk about the origin of this book. In 1943, there was a young Jewish boy and his family moved to Detroit, Michigan. I thought a new life was about to start, but unfortunately, just 2 weeks before moving in, there was a violent incident caused by racial conflict in the local park. In the days after that, more than 40 people were killed one after another. What's more unfortunate is that the place where this little Jewish boy lives happens to be the center of the conflict. For 3 whole days, their doors were closed and they dared not go out. Later, when the riots ended and schools resumed, the trouble started again. On the first day of school, he was discriminated against by some classmates in the class. When the teacher called out the little boy's name, 2 of his classmates glared at him viciously and called him a Jewish devil. However, he had no idea what the words Jewish devil meant. And it wasn't over yet. After school, 2 classmates stopped him again, pushed him to the ground, and punched and kicked him. If ordinary people encounter this kind of thing, they must be angry, and they may have to find a chance to take revenge. However, this little boy was different. Although he was also angry, but at the same time he began to think about many problems because of this incident. For example, why do people react so differently when they are also subjected to violence? Some people are full of anger and only think about how to take revenge, but some people also think about the bright side when they have some emotions. Another example is why some people in life tend to have conflicts because of a disagreement, while some people can not only maintain goodwill, but also actively think of ways to make people get along more harmoniously. The little boy was thinking that in the face of conflicts, he could eliminate the hostility in his heart and keep goodwill between people. So he began to study, first by himself, and later studied under the master of psychology Carl Rogers, and read a PhD. Finally, after decades of painstaking research, this method was finally developed by him. At this point in the story, you must have guessed that this little boy is the author of this book, Marshall Luxemburg. And this set of methods is the book Nonviolent Communication. In 1984, the author Luxemburg created the Center for Nonviolent Communication. In 2006, he received the Bridge of Peace Award from the Global Village Foundation for his outstanding achievements in promoting human harmony. In 2015, Dr. Luxemburg passed away. But this method of nonviolent communication has spread around the world. Speaking of this, everyone must be curious, what kind of method is this? Simply put, by changing the language, we can reverse shape our thoughts. In other words, in the past, we all thought that people have ideas before speaking. Your words represent your thoughts. However, according to the point made in this book, quite the opposite is true. Many times, we first say something inadvertently, and these words, in turn, shape our thoughts. For example, there is a particularly famous story that the army led by one person always loses in battles, and loses every battle. How to report? If we say that we have fought and failed repeatedly, it is over, and there is basically no hope. However, if you say that you have been defeated and fought repeatedly, does it sound like the more frustrated you are, the more courageous you are? The feeling is changed. This is called language shaping ideas. The core of nonviolent communication is to eliminate the hostility in people's hearts by changing language so that people can be filled with goodwill. This is also the problem that the book Nonviolent Communication aims to solve. How can we eliminate the hostility in our hearts by changing the language so as to improve the relationship between people? Next, we will divide this book into 2 parts. First part. Since our goal is to eliminate the negative factors that cause alienation between people, we must know what is the factor that causes it. and how to master systematic nonviolent communication methods. The author believes that the most important factor causing relationship alienation is called moral judgment. What does it mean? That is, we often see what other people do, and we always like to find a moral reason for this behavior. For example, when you see someone chatting in the office, you think it's laziness. When you see someone with tattoos, you think he must be a bad person. Simply put, when we see a behavior, it is easy to immediately abstract a moral or motivational reason. I think that the other party must have some moral reason for doing this, and it is often out of human instinct. You must know that people have a particularly developed ability, which is self-verification. As long as you have a guess, you will unconsciously find evidence to prove that you are right. For example, you are eating in a restaurant, and a person walks past you. When you look down, you find that the phone on the table is gone. You suspect that it was stolen by the person who just passed by. Don't worry, the more you look at him, the more he looks like a thief. When I saw people wearing hats, I wondered, who wears hats when good people eat? Definitely to cover up the looks. If you stare at someone again and find that the other person is not looking at you, what does that mean? There must be ghosts in my heart, and I have a guilty conscience. Why don't you dare look into my eyes? In short, no matter how you look at it, it is not pleasing to the eye. After some analysis, you decided to call the police. When you looked down, you found that your phone had fallen on the ground. At this time, look at the person just now, and make sure you look at the person you like. Wearing a hat means that he pays attention to his image. Not daring to look at me means that he is polite. You see, this is human nature. Habitually guesses about other people's behavior and is particularly difficult to change. Thus, a cycle is formed: seeing behavior, moral judgment, collecting evidence, self-verification, deepening judgment. What you observe is behavior, but once processed by your brain, it becomes a moral judgment. To borrow the author's words, this means that once you put a label, you can only see each other's faults, but not each other's fragility. So, is the label you posted accurate? High probability is not allowed, for two reasons. First, even an adult knows that the real world is not acting in movies, so there are so many absolutely decent villains. The vast majority of people are ordinary people, not bad in nature, generally kind, but occasionally make mistakes. Second, if you feel that others are deliberately playing tricks on you, you can change your angle and try to play tricks on others. You will find that from the moment you start to think badly, before others say you feel awkward in your heart. For example, if you make a small report behind someone else's back, when you see this person again, you will panic in your heart. What does this mean? If you want to play tricks on others, you need to spend your thoughts, brains, and hearts. These emotional costs are far beyond your imagination. Most people simply cannot bear this feeling of unreliability. To put it bluntly, the psychological cost of cheating is very high. From this perspective, there are many things that you think are caused by others, but in the final analysis it is just a misunderstanding. Of course, you may understand this truth, but when you encounter such a situation at a critical moment, you just can't help it. The famous American management guru Stephen Covey once said a word, and it is estimated that many people will be recruited. The general meaning of this sentence is, the purpose of many people's listening is not to really want to listen, but to go back after listening. Note that there is a scientific basis behind this. According to research by scientists, there are two systems in the human brain. For ease of description, we call the first system the pleasure system and the second system the craving system. These two systems, in simple terms, are that the pleasure system is responsible for the feeling of pleasure, while the desire system is responsible for the feeling of desire. In other words, when you particularly want to do something, the motivation behind you is actually divided into two layers. There are some things that you feel particularly happy after you finish them. But this pleasure is temporary, not your desire from the bottom of your heart. For example, when two people quarrel, one of them always has the urge to feel how happy it would be if I scolded him. However, when you really finish scolding, don't worry, the more you scold, the more angry you will become. This is the characteristic of this happy system. It is very deceptive. It makes you feel like you're going to feel great just by doing it. The going back we mentioned earlier is a typical behavior driven by the happy system. However, another craving system is not the same. It's about our deepest desires. For example, we all long to be loved, to be heard, to be respected. Once these needs are met, it is not a momentary pleasure, but a long-term satisfaction. When you're angry, both systems are actually sending you signals at the same time. For example, during a quarrel, the happy system will tell you to swear back, and you will be relieved after swearing. However, the craving system will tell you, don't do it, what you really want deep down is not a fight, but a beautiful relationship. Often, however, the signal from the pleasure system is so strong that it completely overwhelms the desire system. In other words, you do not lack the motivation to be kind to others, you are just controlled by this pleasure system. And our task is to let the desire system take the lead. This is the question investigated in this book. How to do it? The plan given in the book is divided into 4 steps. The first step is called observation without comment. In other words, I only describe what I see, I focus on the facts, but I don't comment casually. You must not ignore this principle just because it seems simple. Know that observing without judgment is the most important step in the entire approach to nonviolent communication. To borrow a phrase from the Indian philosopher Krishnamurti, observation without comment is the highest form of human intelligence. To help you grasp this, let's do a little exercise. See if the following statements are observations or comments. You are so generous vs I see you give money to people in need. Bill is so lazy vs Jack spends 10 minutes cleaning the room every month. Lily loves to procrastinate vs Ross only reviews homework the night before the exam. Obviously, the former sentence is a comment, and the latter sentence is an observation. Now, the exercise is done, it's easy, right? But distinguishing observation from commentary is only the first step in NVC. Next, pay attention, the key point is coming. You have to express your feelings based on the facts you have observed, then describe your needs based on your feelings, and finally make a request. Simply put, the entire nonviolent communication process consists of 4 steps: observation, feeling, need, and request. This may be a bit abstract, let's look at a more specific situation. When you feel angry and want to quarrel, you can use this sentence pattern to respond. For example, a colleague at work got angry at you today, saying that you did a mess at work. You can't wait to go back immediately, don't worry, think according to these 4 steps, and then respond. You can say something like this: I've heard all your comments, and I feel like I'm not getting your approval for my work, and I think I need to improve to get your approval. Excuse me, can you give me some more specific suggestions in a targeted manner based on what you just said? How about it? If it was you, would it be hard to get angry again after hearing such a reply? At the same time, after saying this sentence, do you feel that your relationship with the other party has undergone a slight change in good faith? In fact, the 4 elements of observation, feeling, need, and request do not necessarily appear in groups. They can also be disassembled and used flexibly. The key to using these 4 elements is to have these 4 things in your mind. As long as these 4 elements are clearly distinguished, communication can be greatly improved. The core of nonviolent communication is not to rush to judgment, but to start with observation. And follow the 4 steps of observation, feeling, need, and request to organize language and communicate with others. In fact, the underlying logic of this method is nothing more than 2 sentences. It is to get rid of motivation theory and believe that human nature is good. What does this mean? That is, no matter what other people do to make you unhappy, first of all, don't speculate on motives. Don't think that someone must be targeting you and coming for you. Second, you have to believe that human nature is good. Note that what is said here is not to tell you that there are still many good people in the world, but to believe in yourself, believe that you are kind in your heart, and believe that you are not a person who will speculate on others with malice. Once you switch to this perspective, it will be easier for you to awaken the 4 elements of nonviolent communication, namely observe, feel, need, request. The second part. Speaking of which, the methodology of the entire system of nonviolent communication is about the same. Of course, in addition to the method of this system mentioned above, the author also has a few special reminders. These exhortations can improve the relationship between people to a certain extent. Let's talk about it one by one. The first exhortation is to try to compare yourself with others as little as possible. It is not difficult to understand that it is a habit of comparison in everything. Mind you, this isn't necessarily a bad thing in comparison. You see that others are better than you, and then you are motivated to try to outdo them. However, if you develop a habit of making comparisons, it is not a good thing. For example, two people grew up together and went to college together from kindergarten to university. They are as good as two brothers. However, once entering society, one becomes a scientist within 2 years. What about the other one? If they didn't find a job, the two of them would meet again. This person who had a bad life must feel uncomfortable. Borrowing the author's original words, it is called comparison will cut off the kindness in our hearts to others little by little without you realizing it. For another example, the author also mentioned a book with a strange title called How to Make Yourself Live Miserably. The author is Dan Greenberg. So, how do you make your life so miserable? The method is very simple, that is, to compare. For example, there is an exercise on the first page of this book. Let me show you two photos, a man and a woman, both of whom are in good shape. When I saw this, they were all handsome men and beautiful women, and I was in a good mood. However, you will be unhappy in the next step. The model's height, weight, and measurements are written next to the photo. Then, let you measure yourself with a ruler. Then fill in your own data and make a comparison. After the comparison, any good mood is gone. This is the author's first exhortation: don't compare with others easily. The second exhortation is, don't shirk responsibility under the banner of having to. What does that mean? To put it simply, once many people do something that they feel guilty about, they will always find a last resort for themselves. For example, this book mentions a real incident. Roughly speaking, a foreign school asked teachers to rate students. Note that it is not only about scoring the exam, but also the daily performance of the students. One teacher was particularly irritable. "I hate grading. I don't think it does students any good, it just makes them anxious," he said. "But now, because of the requirements above, I have to score again." At first glance, the teacher seems to be on the side of the students. But, thinking about it carefully, he was actually shirking responsibility. You see, since grading is required, you should think about how to turn grading into a helpful tool for students. For example, in order to score better, do you want to increase communication with students? Is it necessary to observe the needs of students frequently? Once you find out that a student has a problem with his score, don't you want to think about how to help him improve? You see, this is not a simple sentence. The superior asked me to do this, so I had to do this to get rid of it. And once you think this way, it is tantamount to telling yourself that if I score like this casually, any consequences will have nothing to do with me, and it is not my responsibility. I had to do it because my superiors asked me to do it. Therefore, Dr. Luxemburg, the author of this book, suggested that we should not use this have-to-sentence pattern from the very beginning. Turn have to into I choose. For example, before saying, I have to grade because my superiors asked me to do so. Now I can say, I choose to grade because I want to use it as a tool to make students better. You see, once you change have to into I choose, unknowingly, you take the initiative to take on the kindness of others. So be wary of the word have to. It makes you abdicate responsibility. Once the sense of responsibility is gone, your relationship with others will become more and more alienated. The author's third exhortation is that you have to learn to identify emotions. In other words, you have to correctly understand your emotions. We often say, how can we communicate effectively? The answer must be, everyone be more rational. The subtext is that emotion is not a good thing, it affects our relationship. However, if you really think so, you are wrong. The author believes that there are no emotions for no reason, and behind the emotions, there must be some rational needs hidden. For example, the desire to be heard, cared for, popular, etc. As a psychologist said, emotion is actually a kind of rationality, but it is implicit rationality. That is, it works in the dark to help us make reasonable decisions, but you don't realize it. For example, after you have quarreled with someone, you feel guilty in your heart. Driven by this guilt, you are thinking about whether to have a good chat and reconcile with the other party. You see, this rational behavior is actually driven by emotions. You see, there is nothing wrong with emotion itself. The key lies in whether you can recognize the potential needs behind the emotion. In order to help you better understand this matter, I would like to quote a point of view. This is mentioned in the book High Emotional Intelligence is Made by Practice. It said that human emotions are actually divided into two types. One is called original emotion, and the other is called derived emotion. For example, when you are driving, suddenly a car merges in front of you and almost hits you. What was your first reaction? It must be fear. The emotion of fear that is aroused for the first time is the original emotion. However, after being afraid, you will immediately think, isn't this killing people? Attempted murder. It's so annoying. Fear followed by anger. This anger is derived from fear, which is called derived emotion. You see, raw emotions are often very normal physiological reactions, and you can't control them. The key lies in the latter derivative emotion. You have a choice. For example, when you are angry, first think about whether this is my original emotion or a derived emotion. For example, if someone overtakes a vehicle illegally on the road, you feel angry. You can think one more step. Why am I angry? What was my mood like before I got angry? After thinking about it so carefully, I was not angry, but scared. Why are you afraid? Because it's dangerous. So, what to do? Be more careful, avoid danger, and never come to any angry revenge. For another example, when I came home from get off work today, I found that my lover was sitting on the sofa playing with his mobile phone without looking up. You feel angry. I have worked so hard, and you still play with your mobile phone. Can't wait to quarrel immediately. But when you think about it, were you really angry in the first place? You are probably tired, right? I feel that I have been tired at work all day, and my lover should at least ask about his health and care when he returns home. Therefore, your original emotion is actually loss and a desire to be cared for. Since this is the case, why don't you just open your mouth and say, I'm a little tired today, and the housework depends on you? As soon as this sentence is said, the feeling is different. Speaking of this, it is estimated that it is not difficult for you to find that from the original emotion to the derived emotion, there is mainly such a layer of processing in the middle. It is the moral judgment we have been talking about before. Why does your fear turn into anger when someone overtakes you? Because you think, this person is doing it on purpose. Why do you get angry when you see your lover playing with your phone? Because you think he did it on purpose, deliberately coveting the little happiness brought by the mobile phone and neglecting you. Did you find out? After talking so much, I went back to the original question. The root of all communication problems is actually our instinctive imagination. Behind all the behaviors we imagine, there must be a deliberate intention and some kind of moral reason. How should it be changed? In the final analysis, it is still the same sentence. You have to believe that people are kind in general, and you have to believe that you are kind. Now, the reading of this book is over. What is your opinion on this? Welcome to leave a message to discuss with everyone. Hey, if you like our channel, please subscribe us. Haha, remember to like it.